So this is the self-development with tactics book.
So, Tim Ferriss, an incredible guy, an incredibly also successful and just amazing person, But yeah, more after the intro. As always, because it is amazing, because it is like good. But yeah, and with that being said, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And I'm pretty happy to be here. And I'm also pretty happy to talk about this, even though, before I even talk about the other stuff, even though I do have to say that, first of all, it's a really long article, so it might take us some time. But I'm also going to go through it in my leisure time so that I can highlight these things and then just present them to you. Because, of course, there's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of fluff and stuff, but, there's always some things that are not quite necessary, but just for it or letting it be a little bit better, I would say, because, if a book would only consist of the information per se, I don't know if it would be such a pleasure to read it then, if there is no story, if there is no quote-unquote fluff. But of course, if there is too much fluff, then it's not also that good. But before I go through the episode, as I then can see, and as I've also been talking about it just before, there are certain highlights, and these highlights are going to be down in a PDF, and this PDF is linked in the description. It's probably going to be ready when I've finished with it, finished going through it on my own and or going through it inside of the podcast or on a podcast. I don't know, it really heavily depends. But still, you can download it and print it and also view it. It is a Google Drive thing, so it is also virus checked and shit, so there's nothing to worry about. And the last thing is the music, which is just for personalization purposes. Which is a big problem that I've seen and I've faced. And I thought it was actually a pretty good idea. I think it's actually a pretty good idea of mine. If you want to have some background music and you want a specific genre and you want a specific volume as well, then please go down into the description because there is everything like that. Maybe I'm actually going to find out a way to just change the speed of the music to some degree, kind of. But yeah, anyway, I think it is just a good way to just make things a little bit better without actually, because I could also add music, of course, but I know that some people don't like it and some people like it, so this is my kind of approach to it. But yeah, Tim Ferriss, 11 Reasons Not to Become Famous, or a Few Lessons Learned Since 2007. Which is actually a really interesting article, and I've also really been looking forward to reading this article and seeing more articles on Tim's side, or Ferriss' side as well. I'm a really great fan of his podcast. I really like it. I really like listening to it. And I also really like him because I think he's an incredibly inspiring person. Actually, he looks pretty good on this photo. I honestly have to say. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure going through this. And it is also a pleasure, seeing kind of the difference, the new Tim and the old Tim. Or just actually vice versa, the old Tim and the younger Tim. Well, yeah, and also as the just text there says, November of 2008, which is now 12 years ago. Is it? I think it's 12 years. Well, yeah, anyway, I had more hair, a flip phone, and absolutely no idea what was coming. And he always looks humble. He really does. With this jacket and shit, and also here, he doesn't really look rich, even though he's having a fucking net worth of over 100 million, which is actually really a lot, really a lot. If you're just comparing this to other people, so I do believe, I just always like to compare it to, and by the way, all these games that you're seeing there, I'm not playing them, this is just suggestions and whatnot. But if you're just comparing it to, I don't know, some people that really look rich. I just like to take rappers most often. Let's actually Wiz Khalifa. And because I think it is just a good way to show what you could be doing. Yeah, his is 45 million, which is really a lot as well. I know, please don't get me wrong. But it's the half of what Ferriss is doing. And yeah, I know he really looks kind of rich. Wiz Khalifa. So, yes. Let the gimbals, or whatever they are called, symbols of popularity, tinkle still. Let the butterflies of fame glitter with their wings. I shall envy neither their music nor their colors. From John Adams, letters of John Adams addressed to his wife. If I'm not famous by 30, I might as well put a bullet in my head. That's an actual sentence I spoke to one of my closest friends at the time. I was 28. The 4-Hour Workweek, my first book, was published in 2007, and it hit the New York Times hardcover business bestseller list, where I stayed for an unbroken 4 years and 4 months. It was quickly translated into approximately 40 languages, and shit went bonkers, and everything changed. Which is something, actually it was 29, something that's quite interesting as well for the whole story thing. So if you actually want to read the whole one, because I'm not going to read the whole one, I'm kind of not really nitpicking, but I'm just picking some things out of it that I think are interesting, important, necessary, something like that. But the link is going to be down in the description, so if you want to check it out on your own, and if you want to check out the whole one in its fullest, then please also do that. I don't know if it is written by Ferriss actually, or by Tim. It could be, but it could also not be. Like, I don't know. I was 29. To kick off this post, let's start with a real example from 2010. I vividly remember the day I received an email from someone we'll call James. James was a frequent commenter on my blog, and we would become friendly over time. He was a great guy and a huge help to other readers. I had given him advice. He had built a few successful businesses, and we'd developed a nice virtual report or rapport. The day in 2011, however, I actually received an email from James' longtime assistant. It was succinct, conscious, compact, condensed. Well, yeah. And the letter said, James learned so much from you, and he instructed me to give you this video. I clicked on the attachment. James popped up. He was clearly agitated and clenching his jaw, making contorted faces and speaking strangely. He thanked me for all my help over the years and explained that it had helped him through some very dark times. He finished by saying that he was very sorry, but that he had to end things. That's when he turned off the video and killed himself. And as I've been reading it, and I was, by the way, in the train, as I was reading this, like, I honestly have to say, because I know that Tim Ferriss has often been, or his lifelong been struggling with depression and depressive stages in his life. I think as they're called, I think this actually really like you're calling them. And I do believe that it's not doing any good to you if you know that somebody took his life, basically. And it really must be quite difficult. Suffice to say, I didn't realize that this type of thing was part of the fortune fame-seeking bargain. And now it is 2020. So this experience profoundly fucked me up for a long period of time, which is also something that he said. Now it is 2020. 13 years, 5 books, and 1,000 blog posts, and nearly 500 million podcast downloads later. I've learned a few things about the promise and perils of seeking fame. And I say seeking fame deliberately because, let's be honest, I'm not really famous. Beyonce and Brad Pitt are truly famous. They cannot walk around in public anywhere in the world. I'm a micro-public figure with a monthly audience in the millions or tens of millions, which is always just really a lot, by the way. But, nevertheless, there are legions of people on Instagram alone with audiences of this size. New platforms offer new speed. Some previous unknowns on TikTok, for example, have attracted millions of followers in a matter of weeks, and it is insane. You should also go on TikTok, not because you want to be famous, but because you want to seek change, or because you want to make change happen. Because you can, because it is a great platform, because it is so fast and so organic. There's a lot of people that you are going to be able to reach. Like, I don't know, I'm reaching 100 people easily with posts. I'm just posting it. Sometimes it's nothing, actually. I know. It heavily depends on whatever you're posting. If it is good, people are going to view it. If it is not good, people are not going to view it. Basically, which is like kind of like the beauty of social media, I would say as well. That whomever is the best is going to get the attention. It's not really about, okay, you're black, you're white. But, if it is good content and if if people like it, then people are gonna fucking listen to it, and people are gonna just watch it and consume it and do whatever with it, which is, I think, a pretty cool thing. This post will explore a lot of things. Chief among them will be answering the question, if you win the popularity game, what might you expect? I'll mention some of the rewards and upsides, which can be incredible, and I will also take about some of the risks and downsides, which can be horrifying. If you're interested in building a large audience to become rich and famous, some warnings and recommendations are in order. If you're interested in building a large audience you also truly care about and with whom you're vulnerable, even more precautionary tales are in order. And I, by the way, like the later one even more, or way more than the first one. Like, of course you can build an audience, of course you can just do that, of course you can just make something, but making something that you really care about and making something for people that you really care about, I think it's just a better thing to do, because I think it's just right, kind of, I mean, like, we could argue about that, like, we honestly could just have a discussion about that, whether it is just good to do that, whether it makes you a bad person if you're just building something just for the sake of money or for the sake of fame or whatever sake, actually. But I would say just, it will also make things not necessarily easier, but sometimes maybe even easier for you if you're truly doing something that you're caring about, and not just something. On the bright side, some very real benefits. Meeting many of my now dear friends, including Kevin Rose, Matt Mullenweg, and many others, these are people I hope will be close brothers and sisters for life. That led to being able to invest in dozens of early stage technology deals, the proceeds of which then followed, helping many causes and organizations that are making a real positive dent in the world, including education, like Donors Choose, QuestBridge, etc., scientific research aimed at treatments for chronic depression, PTSD, and other intractable psychiatric conditions, the John Hopkins, UCSF, etc., and more, launching projects to aid the above, e.g. Trip of Compassion documentary. And then there are the occasional fringe benefits, like getting tables at busy restaurants, getting free samples of products, although free often ends up being the most expensive, and so on. I mean, like, it's gonna be free in like, okay, you can have it, but we would just really like you to share it on your podcast and shit, which is not that of a bad thing. Like, if it is truly something that I care about, then I would also like to just present it, and I would also like to talk about it. But if it is something that I'm not really into, then it's gonna be a little bit more difficult, I guess. Many of the things I'm proudest of in life would have been difficult or impossible to accomplish without a large audience. For that, I owe every one of my readers and listeners a huge debt of gratitude. Using fame as a lever, however, can be tricky. First off, what type of fame do you want? In concrete terms, what would success look like and what period of time? From 0 to 100, how confident are you that you can convert exposure to income? If more than 0%, what evidence do you have to suggest that your strategy will work? Do you have a plan for becoming unfamous if you don't like it? Which, by the way, is a good thought. Like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to be unfamous? I've actually not been thinking about it as I've been going through it, but it's a really good point. Really something to think about. Taking a step further, we could quote Bill Murray. I always wanted to say to people who want to be rich and famous, try being rich first, see if that doesn't cover most of it. There's not much downside to being rich other than paying taxes and having your relatives ask you for money. I mean, as I've also been reading through it, like, do they really do that? Like, is it really the case? Anyway, where I stop? But when you become famous, you end up with a 24-hour job. The only good thing about fame is that I've gotten out of a couple of speeding tickets. I've gotten into a restaurant when I didn't have a suit and tie on, and that's really about it. Which is actually, I don't know, like, I still think that there might be more to it, but I actually don't know. Like, I'm not famous, obviously. I know, kind of. The tribe, the village, the city. This is important. Your sport shows that you're a hypocrite to profess helping others with your book. You're showing a grave example of the white horseman and to our children. Shame on you, shame and wickedness. It is the most evil war on earth, the one for blood, spectacle for those who would entertain by warring themselves, prostituting violence to those who seek and lust to watch inhumanity. You are an evil one who has gained the world and lost your soul. So here is an email I received in July of 2007. Well, what did I do or say that caused this? What is it in response to a how-to article on clubbing baby seals? What is it? Well, not quite. It was in response to my blog post highlighting the non-profit donorschoose.org, which I've advised for 10 plus years. The explicit goal? To raise money for underfunded public school classrooms. In the introduction, I happened to mention that the founder and CEO of Donors Choice was my wrestling partner in high school. And that's it. And that seems to be enough to just be like, well, you have sold your soul and you've lost your soul, and then because you're just doing something because it is your friend, and you're just trying to get people to donate money to causes, and these causes are not like really important, and things. This same White Horseman reader proceeded to send me more than a dozen increasingly threatening emails, concluding with, I shall deliver you on Judgment Day. What the fuck? Was that a death threat? Was there anything I should do or could do about it? I had never dealt with such things and I didn't know, but I did know one thing. It was very, very scary and completely out of the blue. And it was completely out of the blue, yeah, obviously. I mean, like, I don't know if you... I think to some degree you can expect something like that if you're a certain person, but if you're not, then not. That week I shared the above story with a female career blogger. She laughed and said soberly, welcome to the party. She got an average of 1 death threat and 1 sex request threat per week. At the time, our audiences were roughly the same size. This brings me to the topic of audience size and the metaphor of the tribe, the village and the city. Think back to your 5th grade class. In my case, there were 20 to 30 kids. Was there anyone totally off the rails in your class? For most of you, there is a decent chance kids seemed pretty sane. It is a small sample size. Next, think back to your freshman year in high school. In my case, there were a few hundred kids. Was there anyone volatile or unbalanced? I can think of at least a handful who were prone to violence and made me uneasy. There were fights. Some kids brought knives to school. There was even a kid rumored to enjoy torturing animals. Keep in mind, this high school was in the same town as my elementary school. So what changed? The sample size was larger. Yeah, the higher or the more people you are just considering to be something, the more are also going to be actually that, I guess, if this makes sense. Flash forward to my life in July of 2007, less than 3 months after the publication of my first book. In that short span of time, my monthly blog audience had exploded from a small group of friends, 20 to 30, to the current size of province, Rhode Island's 180 to 200,000 people. Let's dig into that. What do we know of Providence? It's actually Providence, yeah. Here's one snippet from Wikipedia, and bolding is mine. Compared to... I should. Compared to the national average, Providence has an average rate of violent crime and a higher rate of property crime per 100,000 inhabitants. In 2010, there were 15 murders, down from 24 in 2009. In 2010, Providence fared better regarding violent crime than most of its peer cities. Springfield, Massachusetts, blah, 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 blah. The point is this. You don't need to do anything wrong to get death threats, rape threats, etc., but just need a big enough audience. Think of yourself as a leader of a tribe or the mayor of a city. Yes, I do. I mean, unfortunately, it is kind of the case because, I mean, there's always going to be some crazy people, kind of. The average will dictate that you get a certain number of crazies, con artists, extortionists, possible or actual murderers, and so on. In fairness, we should also include a certain number of geniuses, a certain number of good Samaritans, and so on. Sure, your subject matter and content matters, but it doesn't matter as much as you would like to think. To recap, the bigger the population, the more opportunities and problems you will have. A small self-contained town in Idaho might not have a Pulitzer Prize winner among its residents, but it probably doesn't need a SWAT team either. Which is like two good things, isn't there? Now, here we are in 2020, which is going to be what we're going to go through the next time, So I wish you the best health, happiness, and also success, and also hope that it's quite nice weather outside, actually. Maybe we should actually go outside. Might be doing that. Maybe also not. It depends. I wish you the best health, happiness, and also success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to be remembered, which basically means your legacy, which basically means just being a nice person, then being remembered as a nice person. And yeah, 3 other questions that I'm having for you are, why are you here? What are you trying to change? And what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, which is a good thing. But yeah, maybe you even consider subscribing, and I'm going to see you the next time. I hope. So, bye. I do wonder. I wonder how and I wonder why. Yesterday you told me about the blue, blue sky. I know that I can see just a yellow lemon tree.